If you like to talk about combat sports and you want to join the discussion, click the subscribe button below and the bell notification icon next to it and join Knucklehead Nation. Wow, what's going on, Knuckleheads? It is your boy, George. This is the Keep It Clean show with Fighters Rep, and this is our Crawford versus Kavaliauskas and Covington versus Kamaru Usman post-fight reaction. We are live. Thank you guys so much for joining us, man. What a fantastic night of fights. Wow, that Covington-Usman fight definitely lived up to the hype. I thought the Crawford-Kavaliauskas fight was better than it was going to be. I thought the biggest winner of the night in boxing was Teofimo Lopez, an incredible performance over Richard Commey to become a new champion. And wow, Alexander the Great Volkanovski unseating, dethroning Max Holloway to become the new champ. My goodness, and it looks like Israel Adesanya and his camp at City Kickboxing have added another belt to their team, and just fantastic performances all around, man. Let's start off with that Terence Crawford versus Kavaliauskas top rank card, man. Just fantastic stuff all around. Really exciting stuff. I really enjoyed the Teofimo Lopez fight. I thought the Michael Conlan fight was a bit of a gimmick, but, he got it done there. I just didn't think that the guy he was fighting was ready for him, which is Nikitin, the guy who essentially beat him by controversial decision in the Olympics. But, man, Teofimo Lopez, again, we're going to start this thing off with boxing, just starching Richard Commey in the second round of a title fight. I mean, that is big time for Teofimo Lopez. He seemed to just be quicker with his punch. He landed an explosive right hand on Richard Commey. As Commey was trying to throw his own right hand, it kind of totally destabilized Richard Commey. Commey was on unstable legs. He got back up, and then Teofimo just teed off on him, and the referee had to come in and stop the thing because Lopez was just absolutely bombing him out. And wow, I mean, this is a huge win for Teofimo Lopez, who now becomes a lightweight champion and the first ever, I believe, Honduran American to become a boxing champion. So that's a pretty cool thing and a big deal for him. Much love to Richard Commey. I mean, he's always a tough guy. He's been a good champion, I think. He's still a quality fighter. But, man, he went in there with a very explosive Teofimo Lopez. I predicted that this is the way the fight was going to go. However, I did have Teofimo Lopez ending the fight in the second half because I just feel like Richard Commey is such a durable guy. But for him to get Commey out of there in the second round was just unbelievable, man. Unbelievable. So Commey drops to 29-3. And Teofimo Lopez improves to 15-0 with 12 knockouts and becomes the first lightweight titleist in the history of Honduran culture, nationality, or whatever you want to call it, and just a badass fight. And obviously Vasily Lomachenko was in the audience. He was scouting. They both have 15 fights now, although, of course, Lomachenko has a much longer and more illustrious amateur career, but he wants it. He wants the smoke. Teofimo's been asking for Lomachenko. And, do I think Lomachenko is going to get beat by a guy like Teofimo Lopez at this point? No. But I respect Teofimo Lopez Jr. big time for wanting to fight a guy like Vasily Lomachenko. And I also think that he will eventually have enough talent to sort of take the mantle from Lomachenko. But if you ask me at the present time, I think it's very difficult, very, very difficult for Teofimo Lopez to be able to beat Lomachenko, because despite his, big power, which he obviously showed today, I mean, if he's knocking out the likes of Richard Comey, he's a very strong guy. Richard Comey's been able to take a lot of punishment throughout his career and not be hurt like that. I've never seen him hurt like that. But, despite the fact that Teofimo has that power, I don't think Lomachenko would really allow him to, set him up like that and land that shot. It's going to be a lot harder to land on Lomachenko than it was on Comey, who does get, hit pretty easily and has a bit of a leaky defense. So, I don't think that it is an even fight at this point, but I respect, obviously, a fighter in Teofimo Lopez who wants to challenge himself and fight the best people. And, he gets much respect from this channel, and I think he's going to go on to become potentially a superstar. Next, let's just get right into it, man. Terence Crawford against Egis. We're just going to call him Egis Kavaliauskas, or Mean Machine. Great fight. Great fight. I believe in the second round or the third round, Kavaliauskas actually seemed to knock down Crawford, but they didn't call it a knockdown. The referee ended up calling it a slip. They continued to fight. Terence Crawford eventually figured him out like he does with everybody else, and TKO'd him in the 9th round. I will say this, though. I'm saying that Terence Crawford figured him out in the 9th round, but that is a real point of contention for me. I don't know what Terence Crawford was doing today, knuckleheads. I'm not sure what Terence Crawford's strategy was in this fight. He's a very instinctual fighter. He improvises. He does things as he sees them. He looks for holes, and he goes after them, and he capitalizes, and he did a great job tonight. Don't get me wrong, but he was getting hit with a lot of big shots tonight. And if he goes in there against a guy who can maybe punch a bit harder than Mean Machine, and who maybe can place his shots a bit better, Terence Crawford would have been in a lot of trouble tonight. And so I'm not sure if Terence Crawford's strategy in this fight was to make it entertaining on purpose. I do think that in spots he was doing that, but I do think that in the first half of this fight, he was legitimately having difficulty with this guy, and this guy was landing shots on Crawford that if a guy like Errol Spence or Sean Porter, these guys were to land, it may be different circumstances that would have arisen had he been in the ring with guys like that. That's not to say that Sean Porter punches like a freight train or anything like that, but he's so busy and he gets you kind of thrown off your game, and he might catch you with something you don't see. Kavaliauskas was very orthodox. He wasn't doing anything fancy. He was just fighting a conservative fight, and still he was finding a home, especially for a big right hand, and that's a real problem. That's something Terence Crawford is going to have to look at before he gets in there with the best welterweights, and I'm not saying that Terence Crawford can't beat the best welterweights, but he did show a level of vulnerability today, a real level of vulnerability that we haven't really seen too much of since the Gamboa fight, and I felt like, he was getting hit a lot in the Benavidez fight as well. Terence Crawford, don't get me wrong, he's a great fighter. I always have him in my pound for pound, top 2 or whatever it is, and sometimes I consider him to be the best pound for pound. But man, he's got a bit of a leaky defense at times, and I don't think it was completely on purpose. Again, I think in spots Terence Crawford was kind of making this an exciting fight, but he got caught a few times, and I didn't like that. And I don't think that's what you want to do as a professional boxer. I mean, obviously it's boxing. People are throwing punches. You're going to get caught eventually, but he got caught over and over again by the same big right hand from this guy and a bunch of left hands as well. And it was, about halfway through the fight, it seemed that at any time he could just take over once he figured Kavaliauskas out and get him out of there. But again, a very uncomfortable start if you ask me. But he did pull it off, and fantastic performance. Terrence Crawford, still the man, still the champ, down to fight anybody, so he gets all the respect from us. And a fun fight for boxing. Before we get into the UFC now, I just want to thank all you guys for joining the chat. Subscribe, hit the bell notification icon if you haven't already. Feel free to donate to the Super Chat. Just hit that money sign in the Super Chat. Also, get your Fighters Rep gear in the links below or click the Amazon link. Anything you guys buy from there will get credit. You'll help me build this channel. And Fighters Rep Promotions, which is the only unified rules kickboxing promotion in the entire state of California. As you can see, we've got Fighters Rep 9 lined up for you February 28th. It should be on Fight TV, and then we'll upload the fights for free to YouTube afterwards, but definitely check it out and support us. So, let's get right into the UFC here. Another fantastic UFC card, I must say. John Wick, Marco Martinez, GDog0331 in the chat, along with Luke the Puke. Thank you so much for joining the chat. That was a really, really fun UFC card we had tonight. What can I say? Peter Yan, I thought he was going to win his fight against Uriah Faber. He looked fantastic. Let's kind of start down there at the beginning of the main card. So he looked fantastic against Uriah Faber. I mean, I figured Uriah Faber's already kind of at the end of his career, and this would sort of happen to him. So Yan, gets the stoppage at 43 seconds into round number 3, setting up a beautiful head kick on Uriah Faber and kind of, spelling the beginning of the end for Uriah Faber's career. Fantastic performance by Yan. That we had Marlon Moraes, another guy I thought would win, although he had a lot more difficulty with Jose Aldo at 135 pounds. And Aldo surprisingly looked very good in that fight. It was a split decision win, I believe, for Marlon Moraes. So Aldo's still in the game, man, because Moraes is basically one of the best guys at bantamweight. And Aldo made him work, and he's a big, strong guy at that weight class if he can consistently make it. So that was interesting. Then we had Amanda Nunes, obviously the GWOAT. She got what I thought was a pretty handily, dominant victory over Germaine de Randamie. She gets an easy decision win there. Who is the next female to be able to challenge Amanda Nunes and actually give her a fight? That remains to be seen. At featherweight, we had, a pretty big upset with Alexander Volkanovski beating Max Holloway. I thought that was an incredible performance by Volkanovski. I did not think at all that the decision was wrong. I actually thought that Volkanovski was winning that fight. I had him landing the more significant strikes. He was just absolutely tearing up Max Holloway's leg to the point where Max Holloway had to switch stances. That was not easy for the Hawaiian. And, the Australian takes the first championship belt back to Australia for a native-born Australian. Just a badass performance, man. And that team, City Kickboxing, I think he cross-trains out of there as well with Israel Adesanya. Sick talent, man. I mean, Israel Adesanya has been trying to tell us something for a while, and I think, we're now seeing the manifestation of that. They've got some real talent in New Zealand and Australia, and these guys are some bad motherfuckers, man. So, you definitely want to get behind those guys if you're going anywhere near a sports book, because those guys really know what they're doing. Again, I was really blown away by Volkanovski's performance. He didn't really show any weaknesses, man. He didn't show any weaknesses. he had longer arms than Holloway, which is crazy to me because he's like 5'6" and Holloway's like 6 feet tall. He's strong as shit. His cardio was on point. His technique was great. He kept over and over again. There are little subtle things he's doing in there. He was setting up Holloway. He would set up Holloway. He'd have Holloway commit to a punch and he'd counter. And he was kind of, going after those legs and trying to ruin Holloway's mobility. And, he was countering over the top. And, I mean, he was very intelligent in there with the way he was fighting Holloway. So, big shout out to Alexander Volkanovski, man. That's a big win. And then Kamaru Usman versus Colby Covington. My goodness, you guys, what a main event. I thought I went against the grain in this one. I thought that Colby Covington's work rate was just going to be too much for Usman. I thought Usman's only chance in this fight was to kind of hit him with power shots and keep him off. And I mean, I said his only chance, but I actually had it a 51-49 fight is what I said in my prediction for Covington. And it looks like Usman understood what he had to do. Of course, he's got a fantastic camp behind him and his coach, Henry Hooft. And he was using those power shots, and he was able to negate Colby Covington's ridiculous cardio and work rate with the teeps, with the kicks to the body, and with the big uppercut he was throwing up the middle to the body. He was really preventing Colby Covington from really committing to his shots. And the crazy thing was, I felt like when Covington was letting his hands go, he was hurting Usman. And Usman was also hurting Covington. I mean, but if anything, I almost felt like Usman was hurt several times in this fight, or at least buzzed by Covington. And, Covington was also hurt. Obviously, in the end, Usman, dropped Covington with a couple straight right hands, got on top of him. Covington sprawled. The referee felt like he'd seen enough, and he called an end to the fight, which I think was fair. But, I guess Covington could have kept on going. But, at the end of the day, Usman got the much-deserved victory. It was a very good fight, a very tough fight, and I think that that's a fight you want to see run back. And man, how tough is Colby Covington? It looked like his jaw may have been broken in the second or third round, and he just kept on fighting. I mean, these guys did not want to lose. Kamaru Usman, tough as shit too. He was getting cracked with some shots and looked visibly like affected and hurt, and his face was swollen up too. They were both all jacked up in the face. Obviously, Colby Covington got the worst of it, but man, Usman took some big shots too. And fantastic fight, man. What can I say? I would love to see that run back, and it looks like the judges actually had scored it 2-2, 2-2, and one of the judges had it 3-1 for Colby Covington. I could see maybe a 2-2, but, I don't know about 3-1. Perhaps a 3-1 in favor of Usman would make sense. Regardless, it was a very close fight. Usman got the win. He deserved it. 4 minutes and 10 seconds into round number 5, he gets the TKO stoppage. So just overall, you guys, man, I'm exhausted from watching that. That was so good that I'm like physically tired from watching that shit, and also from drinking whiskey. But excuse me, but that was awesome, you guys. That was great. So everybody's in the chat here. I'm gonna try to read as much as I can. You guys got to take it easy for me here. John Wick says, I called it. Usman kicked Colby ass. He ran through him and stopped him in the last round. What a fight. The whole card was awesome. It was a good card, man. It was a great night of fights. He says, I can't believe one judge had it 4-1 for Colby. I think it was 3-1. John Wick says, Lopez versus Lomachenko next. We'll see. We'll see if they're going to make that Lopez versus Lomachenko fight. I don't know if Lopez is ready for that, but he wants it. So, I don't know if the promoter's going to allow that. Boxing doesn't give us the fights we want. So, I'll say no right now, but we'll see what happens. Marco Martinez says, wow, what a fight night. I watched the entire UFC card. It was pretty awesome. We saw everything from an upset to a robbery, so excellent KOs and a nice new prospect. I agree, my man. Yes, we did see the UFC card, G-Dog. And Marco Martinez saying Matt Brown surviving the triangle in round 1 to come back and stop Ben Saunders was awesome. It will be interesting to see who is next for him. You know, I was very impressed by his ability to get out of that triangle, man, and survive that thing and then stop Saunders. So, yeah, definitely impressive. G-Dog0331 says Colby won that fight if it went to decision even after the 2 knockdowns, in my opinion. Wow. So, you know, you guys definitely had it heavily in favor of Colby there, or at least you did, G-Dog. Marco Martinez says Brandon Moreno versus Carter France in the Fight Pass prelims was fight of the night until the main event. If you didn't catch it, I highly recommend checking it out. I actually caught that fight, and that was a good fight. Luke the Puke, Colby got demolished, and he's laughing. Marco Martinez says Chase Hooper's an interesting prospect, only 20 years old and a submission specialist. That said, he has 0 stand-up. He is scary bad on the feet. I think he would benefit from being in the minors. You know, I did see him choke out, I think it was David Tamer is who he was fighting. He did a good job there. Calculated Wrist says, what's up, George? And everybody, what's up, brother? And yeah, man, it was a great card, and I'm exhausted, you guys, from watching those fights. And those fights were awesome. Amanda Nunes was kind of a stinker. I get it, she got the win, but she basically just took GDR to the ground and laid on her. I mean, that's kind of what she had to do to avoid losing. Calculated Wrist says he's heartbroken for Max losing, but Alex deserves it. Absolutely, man. Alex Volkanovski looked like a fucking killer in there tonight. And you're going to have to be perfect to beat that guy. I mean, he looks like a sturdy guy. Let's see here. I don't think the stoppage was early. Colby was done after that second knockdown. Yeah, I mean, he could have in theory kept going. But, you know, I thought it was a decent stoppage. I didn't have a real issue with it. Calculated Wrist says, bad blood fight. Marty versus Colby. John Wick says, man, the first knockdown by Lopez was brutal. Kami was done after that punch. Hell yeah, dude. Man, Teofimo Lopez is an explosive guy, and I told everybody in the prediction that would listen that I just felt like his explosiveness was, you know, what was going to set him apart in this fight. That fast twitch that he had. You know, he has that fast twitch that Kami just doesn't have. And that was the difference in the fight. Marco Martinez says, Colby proves tonight that he's an absolute beast. I felt he was winning the fight, now striking Usman until he stopped. Wow. Colby can fight. You know, I thought Colby could fight too, man. I thought he was doing a great job. I felt like had he stayed on the inside more, he could have probably won that fight, but he kept getting hit with those big body shots and those teeps, and he didn't like it, so he was staying on the outside. He couldn't get into his flow. Usman fought a smart fight. John Wick says Holloway will get a rematch and win it back again. We'll see. Calculated Wrist says, I was complaining to Usman all fight that he didn't take down Colby, but bam, that straight right hand came. Hell yeah. Marco Martinez says 50-50 fight until the end. It was a great fight. You know, and Colby can really fight, man. I mean, he talks a lot of smack or whatever, but he can fight. Colby done. He isn't fighting back. I don't know what that means. Dr. Phil in the chat. Thank you for joining, brother. Hit that subscribe and the bell notification icon if you haven't already. He says, I need to have a serious talk with Colby. You sure do. Calculated Wrist says Colby broke his jaw after the 3rd round. Man, it's incredible to me that he kept fighting him. If his jaw really was broken, he's a very tough dude. I think Covington's stock goes way up after this fight. Showed he can hang with the best in the division, for sure. And Calculated Risk is saying Usman was clipped a couple times. I agree with that. Calculated Risk said he had Colby up 3-1. I mean, that's really interesting. A lot of people are saying now in this chat that they had Colby winning that fight up until it got stopped. I actually thought it was very close. I thought you could make the argument for either guy, but definitely Usman just kicked it up a gear in that last round and finished the job. Marco Martinez says Clarissa Shields was in the house. I saw that. I don't know what they're trying to do with her. I mean, I'll watch it if she goes in there against Amanda Nunes, but this is a different sport than boxing, and she may be in for a rude awakening. Calculated Risk says, but round 5, damn, Usman straight right, bam. John Wick says, you look tired, bro. I'm wasted as hell waiting on my White Castle. Damn. Bring me some White Castle, big dog. I am tired, man. We ate. I had some whiskey. Then I had some cookies. Those cookies did me in, man. It was the cookies that did me in. It was the cookies, brother. D-Boy65 says, imagine if Canelo landed those body shots on Colby. It's all over. Yeah, I mean, these guys have no business at all fighting a guy like Canelo Alvarez. So let's just get that out of our minds. John Wick says, Shields would win a boxing match if she wants to fight Nunes. She should do it in MMA, not boxing. I wouldn't want to watch that fight at all, to be honest with you. I think Nunes would just take her down and just smash her to bits or choke her out. But if they were standing up, I think that would be fun. Although I do think Shields would probably, deck her and put her to sleep. Knuckleheads, appreciate you guys joining the chat, man. 2020 going to be a great year of combat sports. I agree with that. Unfortunately, your boy, I've only been on half an hour. But, man, it is late, and I am tired. So, I'm going to see you guys tomorrow. Probably we'll do an Anxiety Sunday. We can pick up where we left off when we got a little bit more energy, put a little coffee in us. And I appreciate you guys joining the chat. You guys have a great night. And until tomorrow, keep it clean, knuckleheads. Have a good one, you guys.